Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. In this episode, we're going to be diving into a topic that's super relevant for you, our Japanese business English learners. Nailing those English presentations.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack some powerful phrases and strategies to help you present with clarity, confidence, and impact.
Right.
And if you're enjoying this deep dive and want more business English tips, make sure to hit that subscribe button.
Presentations are interesting because while they are a staple in business globally, there are subtle cultural nuances to consider, especially when you're presenting in your second language.
Absolutely. So we've gone deep into some great resources, from the Harvard DCE to top English language schools, to bring you the most effective tips and phrases.
Even iconic figures like Abraham Lincoln and Mahatma Gandhi struggled with stage fright.
Wow.
This reminds us that it's perfectly normal to feel nervous. In fact, the folks at Harvard DCE suggest that a little nervousness can actually be a good thing.
That's right. It's about harnessing that energy and turning it into enthusiasm. And speaking of harnessing energy, let's talk about practice.
Yes.
Both the Harvard DCE and Thinking in English emphasize that practice is absolutely key to building confidence.
And Thinking in English offers some really practical tips on how to practice effectively. They suggest practicing in front of a mirror so you can get comfortable with your body language and facial expressions.
That's such a good idea. And how about recording yourself while you practice? That way you can play it back, analyze your delivery, and even use apps like ELSA Speaks to get feedback on your pronunciation.
What's also fascinating is the emphasis Thinking in English places on confident delivery, standing tall, making eye contact, smiling. These are all nonverbal cues that convey confidence even before you start speaking.
Exactly. It's all about projecting that confidence. Even if you make a mistake, don't let it derail you. Maintaining your composure is key to keeping the audience engaged.
Now let's shift gears and talk about structure. The London School of English highlights the importance of signposting in presentations. Just like a good tour guide, clear transitions help your audience follow your train of thought.
That's a great analogy. It's about guiding your audience through your presentation, making sure they don't get lost along the way. Now let's dive into some power phrases that can help you start your presentation strong. The London School of English gives us a classic opener.
Hooray!
Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today.
This opener is a winner for a reason. It's warm, welcoming, sets a professional tone, and acknowledges your audience.
Let's say that again. Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today.
This phrase is particularly useful if you're presenting to a larger group or in a more formal setting. It helps to create a sense of connection right from the start.
One more time for good measure. Good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today.
Now, let's say you want to establish your credibility early on, especially if you're presenting on a specialized topic. The London School of English suggests this phrase.
Okay.
Let me start by saying a few words about my own background.
I like this one. It's a great way to briefly highlight your expertise and connect with the audience on a personal level. It's like saying, hey, I've been where you are, and I have something valuable to share.
Exactly. Let's repeat that for our listeners. Let me start by saying a few words about my own background.
And one more time. Let me start by saying a few words about my own background.
Now imagine you're presenting a new product launch for, say, ABC Company. You want to grab attention and make it clear what your presentation is all about right from the get-go. In this case, you could try.
Okay.
As you can see on the screen, our topic today is the exciting launch of ABC Company's latest innovation.
This is a great way to immediately highlight the key focus of your presentation and generate excitement. It's clear, concise, and gets straight to the point.
Let's hear that again. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is the exciting launch of ABC Company's latest innovation.
And one last time. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is the exciting launch of ABC Company's latest innovation.
Remember, the beginning of your presentation sets the tone and captures the audience's attention. So choosing the right opening phrase is key. Now, once you've started strong, you need to ensure a smooth flow between sections.
This is where those signposts come in handy, right? Like you said, it's all about guiding your audience through your presentation. Both Preply and the London School of English offer some excellent phrases for seamless transitions. One of the simplest, most effective is.
Right.
Now let's move on to the next point.
This phrase is clear, concise, and keeps the presentation moving forward without any confusion. It's a great all-rounder that you can use in various contexts.
Let's repeat that for our listeners. Now let's move on to the next point.
And once more, Now let's move on to the next point.
If you're aiming for a slightly more formal tone, particularly if you're presenting to senior management or a large audience, you could use
Okay.
my first point concerns.
I like this one. It adds a touch of sophistication and professionalism to your presentation.
Let's repeat it. My first point concerns.
And one last time, my first point concerns.
Now, to keep your audience engaged and curious about what's coming next, Preply and the London School of English suggest using a phrase like, next I'll focus on.
This creates a sense of anticipation and signals a shift in focus, which helps maintain the audience's attention.
Let's repeat that. Next I'll focus on.
And one more time for good measure, next I'll focus on.
This phrase is particularly effective if you're about to introduce a new topic or delve deeper into a specific aspect of your presentation. It's like giving your audience a sneak peek of what's to come.
Speaking of delving deeper, one of the most effective ways to make your presentations memorable and impactful is to bring in real-life examples.
Yes.
Preply really emphasizes this, and it's a technique that resonates across cultures.
I totally agree. Stories and examples help the audience connect with the information on a personal level and understand how it applies to real-world situations. It's one thing to talk about abstract concepts, but it's quite another to bring those concepts to life through relatable examples.
Right. Preply suggests some great phrases for introducing those examples. One of the simplest and most direct is, for example.
It's short, sweet, and gets right to the point.
Let's say it again, for example.
And one more time. For example.
If you want to emphasize the relevance of your example, you can use a phrase like,
Okay.
to give you an example.
This phrase helps the audience understand why this particular example is relevant to the topic at hand.
Let's hear that again. To give you an example.
One more time. To give you an example.
And when you want your audience to really visualize a scenario or put themselves in a particular situation, you can use phrases like, let's say, or let's imagine.
These phrases are great for drawing the audience in and making them active participants in your presentation.
Let's repeat those. Let's say. Let's imagine.
And once more, let's say. Let's imagine.
Remember, using examples effectively can make your presentations much more engaging and persuasive.
Now let's talk about engaging your audience directly. It's not just about delivering information. It's about creating a dialogue and making your audience feel involved. Slide Lizard suggests a simple but effective question you can use to check for understanding and encourage active listening.
Right.
Does that make sense so far?
I love this question. It's a great way to pause, make sure your audience is following along, and address any potential confusion before moving on. It also shows that you care about whether the audience understands your message, which helps to build rapport.
Let's say that again. Does that make sense so far?
And once more, does that make sense so far?
This question is especially helpful if you've just explained a complex concept or presented a lot of information. It gives your audience a chance to process what they've heard and ask for clarification if needed.
Now let's talk about the Q&A session. This is often the part of the presentation that people dread, especially if they're not confident in their English skills, but it doesn't have to be scary.
That's right. The Q&A session is a valuable opportunity to connect with your audience, address their concerns, and reinforce your key messages. And Preply offers some great phrases that can help you navigate tricky questions and buy yourself some thinking time if needed. For example, if someone asks you a challenging question, you can use a phrase like,
Okay.
"That's an interesting question."
This shows that you're taking the question seriously and giving it careful consideration, even if you don't have an immediate answer. It also buys you a few precious seconds to gather your thoughts and formulate a response.
Let's repeat that. That's an interesting question.
And once more, that's an interesting question.
Another phrase you can use to acknowledge the value of the question and create a positive atmosphere is,
Sure.
"I'm glad you asked me that."
This phrase not only acknowledges the question, but also subtly suggests that it's a question worth asking, which can help validate the person who asked it and make them feel more confident.
Let's repeat that one. "I'm glad you asked me that."
And once more, I'm glad you asked me that.
These phrases are great examples of how you can use language to manage the Q&A session effectively and ensure that it's a positive experience for both you and your audience.
Now for our Japanese business English learners, Slide Lizard and the TEF Academy highlight some crucial cultural considerations to keep in mind when presenting to international audiences.
This is so important. Cultural awareness is key to effective communication, and it can make a big difference in how your presentation is perceived.
For example, Slide Lizard points out that certain gestures that are common in Japan might be interpreted differently by audiences from other cultures. Pointing with your index finger, for instance, can be considered rude in some cultures, so using an open hand gesture is generally a safer alternative.
That's a great point. It's those subtle differences that we might not even be aware of that can sometimes create misunderstandings. So it's always a good idea to do some research on the cultural norms of your audience before a presentation.
Absolutely. Another important consideration is tone of voice. While Japanese speakers tend to be more monotone when presenting in English, Slide Lizard and the TEF Academy suggest using a more expressive tone of voice and varying your pitch to better engage international audiences.
That's a valuable tip. In many Western cultures, a more dynamic and expressive speaking style is often associated with confidence and enthusiasm.
And finally, maintaining appropriate eye contact is crucial. The Cultural Atlas highlights that in Western business culture, steady eye contact is seen as a sign of confidence and engagement, while in Japan, it can sometimes be considered disrespectful.
So finding that balance and adapting your eye contact to the cultural context of your audience is essential.
These cultural considerations are just a few examples of how being mindful of your audience's cultural background can enhance your communication and make your presentations more effective.
Now let's talk about concluding your presentation powerfully. Ending on a strong note is just as important as starting strong. It's your last chance to leave a lasting impression on your audience and reinforce your key takeaways.
Exactly. The London School of English offers some great phrases that can help you close your presentation effectively and memorably. One option is to end with a powerful quote.
Okay.
I'd just like to finish with the words of a famous scientist slash politician slash author.
This technique adds weight and gravitas to your closing remarks, especially if the quote is relevant to your topic and comes from a respected figure.
Let's hear that again. I'd just like to finish with the words of a famous scientist slash politician slash author.
And one last time. I'd just like to finish with the words of a famous scientist slash politician slash author.
If you want to inspire action and leave your audience feeling motivated, you can use a call to action approach. Like,
All right.
now let's go out and create opportunities.
Well, it's a great way to end on an uplifting and empowering note, encouraging your audience to take what they've learned and apply it to their own lives or work.
Let's repeat that. Now let's go out and create opportunities.
And one more time, now let's go out and create opportunities for.
Remember, your closing statement should leave a lasting impression on your audience and reinforce your key takeaways. So choose a phrase that resonates with your message and leaves them feeling inspired and motivated.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from managing nerves to mastering those power phrases for each stage of your presentation.
We've explored how to start strong transitions smoothly, engage your audience, handle the Q&A session, and conclude effectively, all while keeping cultural considerations in mind. And of course, we've emphasized the importance of practice.
I feel like I've learned so much from this deep dive. What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you? For me, it's that reminder about transforming nervousness into enthusiasm. That shift in perspective can make a world of difference. And of course, practice is everything. It's not just about memorizing the words, but about really owning your presentation and connecting with your audience authentically.
I completely agree. And what I find fascinating is how crucial cultural awareness is, especially for our Japanese listeners, presenting in a global business setting. Adapting your delivery and understanding those subtle nuances can significantly impact how your message is received.
Absolutely. It's about bridging cultures through communication. Now, before we wrap up, let's do a quick recap of those power phrases to help them stick.
Sounds good for starting your presentation strong. We had, good morning, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today. And for a touch of personalization, let me start by saying a few words about my own background.
Those are great for setting the stage and grabbing attention. For transitioning between sections, remember these gems. Now let's move on to the next point. And for a slightly more formal approach, my first point, concerns.
Clear and effective signposting. And to bring those points to life, we had some great phrases for introducing examples, for example, and to highlight relevance. To give you an example.
Examples are so powerful for making information memorable and relatable. And how about those phrases for engaging the audience directly? Does that make sense so far? This one's great for checking understanding and encouraging active listening. And for those tricky questions during Q&A we have, that's an interesting question, or I'm glad you asked me that.
These can buy you some thinking time while still acknowledging the question's value. And finally, for concluding powerfully, we had, I'd just like to finish with the words of a famous scientist, politician, author, and to inspire action. Now let's go out and create opportunities for...
Wow, we really covered a lot, but remember, these phrases are just tools. True confidence comes from combining them with a deep understanding of your content and a genuine desire to connect with your audience.
Precisely. It's about finding your own voice and style while using these phrases as a framework to guide your presentation.
So go out there, practice, and own those presentations.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive and want more tips and strategies for mastering business English, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're here to help you communicate with confidence and clarity on the global stage.
Until next time, keep learning and keep presenting.